welcome to the SAP guided webinar series. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. Later, we will conduct a question and answer session. Instructions will be given at that time. If you do require assistance during the call today, please press star followed by 0, and an operator will assist you offline. And as you heard, today's call is being recorded. I'd now like to turn the conference over to your host for today. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Cynthia. Welcome everyone to the Friday webinar series, and today's topic is going to be Introduction to Web Dynpro for ABAP. This is Venky Narayanan. I'm going to be the host and the presenter. I'm a product manager with SAP NetWeaver CM Group. Let's get started. The agenda for today will be, we'll see a few motivation slides for Web Dynpro. What is Web Dynpro and why do we need it? The programming model of Web Dynpro, and we'll also see how to reuse the Web Dynpro component. And as an example, we will take the ALV, the SAP list viewer control, and we will also see how to convert the existing Dynpro streams to Web Dynpro, and we will also cover some of the advanced topics like dynamic Web Dynpro programming and portal integration and ALV integration, things like that. Okay, so at the end of the presentation, you will be able to understand what is Web Dynpro. If you do not know it already, if you don't have exposure to the Web Dynpro Java flavor, you will understand what is Web Dynpro and also the programming model, and you may be able to even start developing your own Web Dynpro for ABAP application and components. Let's get started. Here are a few motivation slides. The first slide that you are looking at, it depicts the UI technology in the SAP arena. In the x-axis, you have the timeline, and in the y-axis, the different technologies. So if you look at the bottommost part, which is the SAP GUI, which has been the fat client, classical fat client that is shipped with the SAP R3 since the early days. And in the mid-90s, with the advent of web technology, we got the ITS, the Internet Transaction Server, which enabled us to run SAP transactions on the web and also customize them using IAC. And the basis layer was converted to or upgraded to the web application server with the application server 610. So we got the server-side scripting technology called business server pages, which is an ABAP technology, and that was supported from 610. And with 620, with a J2EE engine available as a different stack parallel to the ABAP server stack, we got the JSP, the Java server pages, the HTML business tag library for Java, and later on the HTML-D tags were also available in the DSP technology. So, starting with NetWeaver 04, the Web Dynpro for Java was available, and as of NetWeaver 2004S, the Web Dynpro ABAP flavor will be available. If you are not familiar with NetWeaver 2004S release, it's a minor release of NetWeaver, which will be the platform on which the MySAP ERP and MySAP Business Suite 2005 will be built. So, this will be available for ramp-up starting with Q4 of this year. Alright, let's move on. Objectives of Web Dynpro. Why do we need Web Dynpro? Web Dynpro is needed because we need a model-based UI development environment. Rather than code-driven approach, people should be spending a lot more time in the design so that it's easy to maintain the application. And also, there should be a model inherently supporting the segregation of UI logic, the presentation logic from your back-end business logic. And the technology should be independent of the client in the sense where the UI will be rendered, for example, your browser or your mobile device. So whatever you develop, for example, the Java server pages or business server pages, the applications that you develop will be dependent on a particular browser, let's say. So if what if tomorrow the technology changes, your protocol changes, or if you are rendering in HTML today, what if that changes? Do you have to rewrite your code? So we need a technology that is independent of client technology. And also, there should be a central implementation of all the UI standards, for example, the Adobe integration and internationalization, and different UI elements, list of UI elements supported, independent of the technology. So these are supported by the new technology that is Web Dynpro, which has been available as a Java flavor and will be available in the ABAP flavor real soon. And the supported platforms are the Java flavor will be is being supported in the NetWeaver 2004 version, and the ABAP flavor will be supported in the NetWeaver 2004S version. Okay, so here is a little more detailed slide on the rendering technology. The Web Dynpro UI is independent of client technology. The client could be a web browser, a smart client, or we do not know what's coming up in the future. For example, Microsoft is working on some intelligent browser, a smart browser. So what's going to be the protocol for that? And will that be through HTML or any other hypertext language? So how was it done using Web Dynpro? In Web Dynpro, what you do is you spend more time on modeling your UI, because Web Dynpro is the strategic UI technology from SAP, and whatever you design will be stored in the form of metadata, the Web Dynpro metadata, which is independent of any client technology. So the metadata is in the neutral format, and based on the client, that is if you are invoking from IE, Internet Explorer, or a PDA, the respective rendering engine, the so-called rendering engine, will read the metadata, the Dynpro metadata, and then render whatever is compatible with the client. For example, if the application is being invoked from a web browser, a classical Internet Explorer, then HTML code with embedded JavaScript with HTTP or HTTPS protocol will be rendered to the web browser. So that's how the Web Dynpro achieves client independence. Okay, so based on the client, the respective rendering engine will render the UI. So what is Web Dynpro? Web Dynpro is a programming model for UI. It is based on the MVC design pattern. MVC stands for Model View Controller. It's not a SAP proprietary design paradigm. It's been there for a while. People debate it comes from Java, or it even seeded in Java. And the Web Dynpro is not 100% derived exactly from MVC, but it adapts the MVC concept, and then it's little flexible than the model view controller paradigm. We'll see that in the subsequent slides. So it is a programming model. What else? It also provides set of tools for your UI design. Okay, it's a graphical modeling tool, so you don't have to do any coding. Rather than code-driven approach, this will be more of a model-driven approach. You model your UI. You drag and drop your UI elements. Okay, you reposition and you set attributes using mouse clicks and not by coding. So you concentrate less on coding and spend more time on the modeling of your UI. So we have tools for that, And how was it done? The Java flavor, as many of you know, it is integrated with the NetWeaver Developer Studio, and the Web Dynpro ABAP, which we are going to look at today, is integrated with the ABAP workbench. So if you come from ABAP background, SE80 is a transaction for Object Navigator, where you can develop all kinds of ABAP components. And the Web Dynpro for ABAP is also tightly integrated with this development platform, which is the workbench. It also provides runtime environment. It's not just tools and programming models. It also provides robust runtime environment. There is something called a Web Dynpro framework, which is in charge of reading the metadata and rendering, not just the design time, but also at the runtime. And also we have common services available for both the Java as well as the ABAP flavors of Web Dynpro. So it's also a technology for developing modularized components, reusable components. Of course, you can develop components in ABAP. You can develop, you can modularize your application using function modules or ABAP objects, but do we have anything to modularize the UI part of it? If you come from classical Dynpro development background, of course, we can develop something called substream, which is not really flexible, but that will work to some extent for reusing the Dynpro components. But this is much more than developing a mere substream. You can develop reusable and very flexible components. We will see that also in subsequent slides. So, what are the main features of Web Dynpro, or what is Web Dynpro? Provides a programming model, provides a set of tools. It also provides a robust runtime environment, and so you can develop modularized UI software. Not only UI, which is more screen-oriented, you can also provide UI services, develop UI services, modularized services. Okay, so here's the scenario. This is how it works, the big picture. On the left-hand side, the dark gray boxes represent the Java flavor. On the right-hand side, the light blue boxes represent the ABAP flavor. So if you see, it's pretty similar, right? At the bottom portion, you have the J2EE server, right? And on the right-hand side, you have the ABAP server. So let's take a look at the J2EE server. The J2EE server is made use of by the Web Dynpro application, which is the Java, and it also has a separate runtime, the J2EE runtime. And for the business logic portion, the Web Dynpro for Java would make use of EJBs in the J2EE server, or it can do RFC calls or web service calls to the ABAP server too. And the UI is rendered onto the enterprise portal. It has a tight integration as an iView, Web Dynpro iView. And exactly the same stuff on the right-hand side. The concept is similar. The ABAP server hosts the business logic APIs. It could be BAPIs, RFCs, remote function calls, web services, that is RFC or BAPI enabled as web service, or even it could be ABAP objects, which could be made use of by the Web Dynpro for ABAP, that is executed in the runtime, Web Dynpro runtime, in the ABAP server, and rendered as an iView in the portal, that is Web Dynpro iView. So the concept is very similar between Java and ABAP. So what is the similarity between the Web Dynpro for Java and ABAP? The programming model is identical. The building blocks of the Web Dynpro in both the worlds, that's identical. You talk about components, controllers, context, views, windows, and interface, and things like that. So the programming model is same, and unified rendering, the rendering technology is also exactly identical, and same client, that is a browser or any other client is same between Java and ABAP. So what are the differences? The main differences are, of course, the development environment, because you are developing the Java flavor, so you will be using the NetWeaver Developer Studio, and for the ABAP flavor, you will be using the Workbench. And of course, the runtime. The runtime for Java will be the J2EE engine of NetWeaver Application Server, whereas for the ABAP, it will be the ABAP server of the App Server. Okay, those are the main differences and the similarities. So we know what is Web Dynpro, and what it provides and what it's capable of a little bit. And we are going to look at the theory in detail. But before that, my concept in learning any new technology or new product is take a look at it first. Simple, very simple. Just take a look at it instead of going through the theory and then imagining things. Black boxes. Will it have an ear or a nose and stuff like that? Just take a look at it. Just build a very simple hello world application. See how it looks like, and then let's come back to the theory. Okay? So here is a demo of hello world. Let's build a small application called hello world. So here is I just logged into the ABAP server through SAP connection, right? And if you are building Web Dynpro, make sure you are using NetWeaver 2004 S or above. How do you check that? So the system status, and on the right hand side, the SAP system data component version is SAP NetWeaver 2004S. So if you are using My SAP ERP 2005 or any of the Business Suite 2005, the underlying platform will be NetWeaver 2004S. And for techie guys, if you are interested in knowing the internal version number of the application server, the one voice is just, we no longer call it as web application server, it should be SAP NetWeaver application server. So if you want to know the internal numbering of the app server, it is the 70. Alright? Okay, so let's go ahead and develop a simple application. How do you do that? The transaction code is SE80, which is the workbench or object navigator. And you might have seen this list. You can develop programs, function groups, blah, blah, blah. Now there is a new entry called Web Dynpro Component and Interfaces. So we are going to develop a new Web Dynpro component. So what is a component? Is it the same as the application? Is it the same as a view? We will see that in the theory. So let's go ahead and build a component, Venky WD demo. Alright? And it says it doesn't find that Web Dynpro. Do you want to create the object? Sure, yes. And like any other ABAP component, it prompts me to assign a package and assign a transport number. I'm going to save it as a local object since I'm not going to transport it, and it's just a demo. Look at that. It has created a few components automatically for me. Just to see Web Dynpro component, there is something called a controller. Okay, we'll see what it is. There is something called a window and an interface. So I am going to create a view. A view is the UI representation. Okay, a smallest component of your UI representation, which needs to be included in a window. Okay, we'll see all those later on, but let me go ahead and create a view first. Right click and get the context menu, and then go to create a view. Right, give a name for the view. Okay, I'm going to call it as hello, and the description is hello view. Alright. Okay, so now we are getting a kind of a painter. It's called a view editor on the right hand side. Okay, if you have already worked with Web Dynpro Java, it should be pretty similar for you. You should be familiar with this. Here, you have a list of UI elements available for you to work with, right here. And then on the right hand side, here is UI element representation in a hierarchical manner. As you include new elements, you will see how it works here. And on the right bottom, you have the properties for all those UI elements. So you can click on a UI element and then set different properties. Should it be enabled, disabled, or what should be the text and tooltip and things like that. Okay, so all we are going to do here is just display a text called Hello World, right? For that, these are the UI elements, so you can either drag and drop from here, or you can go to the hierarchical representation and then get the context menu by right-clicking and then insert new elements, right? I'm going to do a drag and drop, okay? So I need a caption, which is just a simple text. I'm dragging and then dropping on the editable area. Did you see that? In the hierarchical, context list, a new caption _1 is automatically created. So let's give a text for that in the property section. A text is Hello WB ABAP World. And then hit enter, and that's your text that will be displayed on the screen when somebody invokes this Web Dynpro application from a browser. Alright, so let's save it. And as I said, view is the smallest component, and window is what you see on a browser screen. Okay, a window may contain one or more views, but at one point of time you will see only one window. So and the window is automatically created for you because you gave a name when you created the component. So, and if you expand the window on the right hand side, there is something called the default view. Okay, alright, so let's include the view that we just created. For that, I'm right clicking and then clicking on the embed view, and it's going to prompt me which view I want to embed. There is an empty view which is automatically created by the system, and the hello view is what I created. So I'm going to choose the hello view. Alright, so we have now embedded the view inside the window. Let's save it. Okay, the demo was saved. Alright, so now is it what we did? We created a Web Dynpro component in SAP. We created a view, and then we laid out the UI, how you want that to look like, and then included the view in the window. Now, is it ready to get executed? No, not really. We need something called an application, which is an entry point for this Web Dynpro component. Okay, only the application can be executed, not the component itself. Component is reusable. You can make use of this component somewhere else in another component. But to execute it, you need to create something called an application. So, going back to the component, getting the context menu by right-clicking, create Web Dynpro application. That is the entry point. Okay, this is my Hello World application. Alright, if you notice here at the bottom, you see a URL. So, the URL is tied to the application, not to the component. So, this is a URL you can just invoke, cut and paste into your browser, or have it as a hidden href somewhere else. So, this is how you invoke this application. So, the application, if you invoke this URL, it will automatically trigger the component and show the default window and the view embedded within that. Okay? So, let's save it. Save it as a local object. Now, we need to activate all the components that we created. If you are familiar with the ABAP development environment, whatever you create, most of the object components need to be activated in ABAP. Okay, so now it's activated. So how do you execute it? What do you execute? You execute the application. There are, of course, many ways to do it. you have the URL, so just cut and paste this URL into a browser, or from here you can click on this icon called test or execute, or just F8 like any other ABAP program, a classical ABAP program as report, right? So let me click on this. So that's going to launch a browser and then invoke that URL. Well, this is not the screen that we designed, right? Why is it asking or showing this screen? That's because you are from the browser, you are trying to hit a SAP box, which is secure. So to hit the SAP box either through SAP or through JCO or .NET connector or any other way, you have to supply the credentials, user credentials, so user ID and password. And if you have enabled, if your admin has enabled the SSO2 cookie in the backend, you will be able to enter the user ID and password in this screen. If you have already worked with application server 620, then you would not be getting this screen, but you will be getting a basic authentication pop-up, which is the NP authentication pop-up with user ID and password. Since this system doesn't have SSO, you have to click on the logon and you get the same basic authentication pop-up. So you can enter the user ID and password, and this is the exact same user ID and password that is defined in the backend R3 system or your NetUser application server system. And there you go. You see hello WD, Web Dynpro ABAP work. And that is our first application that we developed in Web Dynpro. Alright? Awesome, huh? And just think about it. How many lines of code did you write to do this? Yes, that's right, none. So it is a model-driven approach. Had you done the same thing in DSP or JSP or servlet, any of the server-side scripting technologies, you would be writing code either in the form of HTML or in the form of the native language ABAP or Java. But here, you did it through models. Right? Okay, let's move on. So you get the hang of how to develop a Web Dynpro application for the ABAP flavor. Now let's look at the theory, programming model. Okay, as I said, it is based on the MVC design time paradigm, which is Model View Controller, MVC. That is the short form of Model View Controller. There are mainly three components: model, view, and a controller. What is a model? Model is where you have the business logic, okay? And view is your presentation layer, the UI part of it. And the controller is the guy in between model and view, coordinating all the stuff, taking care of the user eventing and taking care of passing the data from the model business logic to the UI presentation layer and stuff like that. Okay, so this is a good practice to follow if you want to segregate really the UI presentation from the backend and business logic, right? Because you don't want to intertwine these two, and that will become a maintenance nightmare. Okay, so the Web Dynpro doesn't exactly follow the MVC model. It is just inspired by the MVC, so to say, because in the MVC model will be able to communicate with the view directly when any of the attributes change. But that's not possible in Web Dynpro. So we have controllers, yes, and the views, yes, and the controller will talk to the model, which could be typically an RFC or a function module or ABAP object class, right, directly. Okay, and these are the components of Web Dynpro, or the building blocks. We have something called a component, the Web Dynpro component, which contains windows, views, and controllers. Okay, so we have already seen some of these. A window, what is a window? Window is the UI representation. That is what you see when you execute a Web Dynpro application. A window can contain one or more views. Okay, the view is the subpart of a window, and the views are again embedded within a window, right? And what is a controller? Controller, we saw in the MVC in the previous slide, controller is in charge of two things. One is holding the data in the form of a context, something called a context, right? The context is a placeholder for holding your data, and also events, handling the methods and events. So each view has only one view controller, and each component also has something called a component controller. Additionally, you can also have a custom controller. All right. So, so these are the basic building blocks of a Web Dynpro. Okay. Let's look at the view controller and view context in a little bit more detail. If you are familiar, if you have worked with Web Dynpro for Java, these should be exactly identical because the programming model is the same between Java flavor and the ABAP flavor. So you have view. The view contains one or more. The window contains one or more views. View has two parts. One is the layout, which is the UI element, how you see it on the screen typically in your browser, like an input box, a button, and stuff like that. And also there is something called a view controller attached to the view. And the view controller has a context, which is the hierarchical representation of your data, right? It's a tree structure, so it has only one base node, and then below that you can have multiple nodes or attributes. Okay, and the attributes and nodes are tied to the layout UI element. Okay, we will see what's the actual technical terminology for making such ties, right? So here is an attribute called the carrier ID, which exists both in the form of UI element as well as in the context. All right. So if somebody types an LH on the screen, it will be available in the context automatically. You don't have to do any programming for moving this value. It will be done automatically if you have specified the tie, the correlation between these two fields. All right. So what else is contained in controller? Controller is also in charge of, as I said, coordinating stuff, right? Coordinating between different components or different parts. So where is the coordination done? That is done in the methods or events. So you have something called a method. For example, in this case, WD do init. Do init is triggered when the Web Dynpro is initialized for the first time. Right? So here you can write your code, your ABAP code, to get the hang of a specific node and also set, for example, you may want to set some initial value to one of the attributes, which will be visible on the screen when the screen is shown. Right? For example, you're setting the Apple code to parent. Or there could be a method for handling your user event, user interaction. So if the user clicks on the button go, where do you handle it? How do you handle it? That is using the event. On action, go to next. That is a custom event defined by the user. Alright? Okay. Let's move on. What is a UI element? UI element is something that you see on the screen, the graphical entity. It could be visible on the screen or it could be logically hidden behind the scene, but it is a graphical entity still. And examples, an input box or a group box or a label and things like that, a table. Okay, those are the UI elements. So how the UI elements are arranged? In the layout, you can see the visual representation of the UI elements, whereas in the actual context, it is organized in the form of a hierarchical tree structure. Okay, and there is only one base node, and the name of the base node is root UI element container. You cannot change it. It's a fixed name. Root UI element container. Okay, so view editor, we have already seen this. That's why I gave a short demo so that you can really understand how it works. So if you want to work with a view editor where you design your view, you can go to the Web Dynpro component and then right click and get the context menu and create or change an existing view, and it throws this screen with different tabs. The layout tab is what gets enabled initially by default, and then we have already seen this. You have all the possible UI elements on your left. The middle section contains your layout, the design. The right hand side has two components. The top portion has the context hierarchical representation of the container, the UI container, and for each UI element you can set different properties on the right box. Okay? The UI element can be dragged and dropped, or you can right click and then create the element manually, and you can set the properties, different properties. Of course, there is no coding so far. Okay. Now, there is a special test application called WDR Test UI Element. If you are not very familiar with the Web Dynpro UI element, this is a good place to start. You can check out what is available and how to handle different UI elements. Let's take a look at it. That's going to be the very short demo test application UI element. So I'm going to show you an existing, comes standard out of the box. You don't have to develop, nobody has to develop or install anything extra. It's called WDR UI test element. So for WDR test UI element, and how do you execute it? Go to the application and then run it, or copy and paste the URL. Look at that, it did not ask me for the credentials this time. Why? Because since you already logged in last time, the front-end browser has a memory cookie called SSO2 logon ticket. So that is being passed from the browser to the back-end SAP system, the application server. So that's how it validates the credential. Alright, so here, by default it shows the different attributes for a button. The top is the actual button in execution. You can say, well, I don't want the image and I want to change the text to say get customer. Okay, and then click on apply changes. There you go. No image, and it says get customer. That's how the button looks when you really execute it. So you can play around with different values. Let me show quickly another one. What shall I say? Let's say the first one, the breadcrumb. Okay, breadcrumb shows you the navigation history. If you navigate through multiple pages, you don't want to click on the back button, because if you're really building enterprise applications, it's not a good practice to click on back button, because it may go into inconsistent state of an application. So it's a good practice to show the breadcrumbs, and if the user wants to get to a specific previous page from the navigation history, you can click on the breadcrumb. So let's say I don't want to show the image. Just separate all these links with the greater than sign. That's how it's done. Okay. For example, if somebody clicks on back button, see what happens? The system automatically throws a pop-up saying do not use back button. Okay, that's out of the box. You don't have to program it. And look at that. The background screen being crossed. Okay. Anyway, that has nothing to do with Web Dynpro, of course. Okay, so let's get back to our presentation. So you saw the standard application called WDR test UI element, which you can play around to get yourself familiar with UI elements. Alright, since we don't have much time, so I'm going to step on the pedal and accelerate a little bit more, so a little faster. Context and data transport. What is the context? That is the container to hold your data, right? And it is in the form of a tree structure. So you have a root node and different nodes under that. So where is the context? The context is part of any controller, right? Let it be a view controller or the component controller. So in case of view controller, it is closely tied, integrated with the view. So all the UI elements that you see on the screen as part of the view will have a representation or a corresponding data in your context. So it can be tied together, and then when the user enters the value on the screen, it can be automatically brought into the context node or an attribute value, right? And what is the use of a component controller? The component controller is part of the Web Dynpro component. It is, a level above the view controller. So it is mainly used for two purposes. One is to coordinate between views and also to interact, for example, with the business logic. Okay, we'll see that later. So mainly the context is the container for holding your data, right? And you can correlate different values, that is different attributes. That's what we are going to see in the next slide. It's called data binding and context mapping. It's exactly the representation of the previous screen. On the screen you have a table, right? The table needs to be tied to the context node called slice. So that is called data binding. You bind the view's UI element to the context node or an attribute. So that is data binding. And then there's something called context mapping. You can map the view controller context to the component controller context. So once you bind and then map, the value gets transported automatically and made available on the other end. And remember, it is bidirectional. That is, let's say you have bound the view UI element to the view controller context. So it is both ways. If the user enters a value, it will be available in the context. If the context gets the value, for example, from the controller, it will be displayed, the same value will be displayed on the screen. So it is bidirectional. Okay? So component controller, what is the use of the component controller? The component controller can map the context data with the view controller, right? So it can make calls to the model class, could be a DASI, an RFC, or a class, a real ABAP object class. So the component controller context structure will be primarily used for making these calls. Or if you have multiple views, how do you make values available in one view, pass it to another view automatically? That is done again through the component controller. Okay. Cardinality. What is cardinality in the programming model? It's exactly same as any other entity relationship model. Cardinality is the relationship between any two entities. In this case, you might have heard about 0 to many, 1 to many, 1 to 1 kind of relationship. It's exactly the same. We are looking at a table in the UI layout of the view and a node which contains an airline ID, airline name, and URL, right? So if you set the cardinality to 1, it can hold only one data row. That is, it can contain only one value of airline name, and URL. So how do you hold a table of data, multiple rows? All you have to do is define the node's cardinality as 0 to many. If you say 0 to many, it can hold any number of rows from 0 to n could be any number, restricted only by the memory. Okay, so basically, if you are trying to represent a table, a tabular format, you will be handling the cardinality 1 to many, 1 to n, or 0 to n, setting it to 0 to n. Okay, so that's how it can hold, the context node can hold multiple instances of each row. Alright, so Singleton here is a little bit more complex theory. What is Singleton? Take a look at this example. You have, take an example of any business document. In any enterprise application, you will see the parent-child relationship more often than not, right? So, for example, a list of sales orders and for each sales order there could be a list of items, line items. Same thing with purchase order. For example, in this case, what you see on the screen here is on the top you have a list of airlines, and when the user chooses a single airline, all the corresponding flights will be displayed in another table, right? So in this case, the airline cardinality is 0 to many. That means there could be many airlines, and the cardinality of flights is 0 to 1. That means for each airline you can show only one flight, right? So that's how it goes. So if the user chooses an airline, in the bottom table you can show only one flight. But what if you want to show many flights, right? So the cardinality is 0 to m per flight, right? So for any selected airline, you will be showing multiple values of these flights, right? Right. Think about the memory requirement for such a scenario. That is, the context needs to hold all the values, all possible airlines, and for each airline, all possible flights. So, for sizable application, the memory requirement could be huge, tremendous, right? So how do you optimize it? That's where Singleton plays a role. So, in the flight, take a look at the flight node. In the flight, if you mention the flight as Singleton, then you don't have to load, or the system doesn't load all the values of flights for each and every airline automatically. But instead, it loads only the flights relevant for the selected airline. That is called a Singleton. So, if the user chooses United Airlines, then only the flights relevant to the UA will be loaded in the context. Okay, so Singleton saves a lot of memory requirements. Of course, there is always a trade-off between space and time, right? So if you want to save space, there could be a little trade-off with the performance. Okay, plugs and navigation. Let's say a window has more than one view. Okay, how do you navigate between views, right? What if a user clicks on a button on the top view and some event needs to be triggered on the bottom view? How do you do that? That's where the plugs come into picture. We have something called outbound plug and inbound plug. So the first view would have something called an outbound because you are trying to trigger an event, and the bottom view will have an inbound plug which receives that event and then behaves accordingly. Okay? Alright? So, if the user clicks on go to, the search flight method will be triggered, on action search flight, and if you look closely, right there we invoke a plug called the go to main view plug. Of course, don't be surprised with the syntax. The underscores are missing. That's a cut and paste problem with the painter, Microsoft Paintbrush. So there will be underscores there. So WD this fire go to main view plug, which is the inbound, the outbound plug of the top portion, and then the inbound plug will be triggered. So that's how you communicate between views. So what is a Web Dynpro application concept? We have already seen that. And application is the entry point to your component. So that's where you have the URL. The URL is tied to the application. And you can also have parameters to your application. If you want to start the application with some initial value in the query string, you can do that. That's part of the application. You can set a default language and stuff like that. So, application is your entry point. If you want to execute execute a Web Dynpro component and render different views and windows, you have to create something called an application. Okay. We know what are components, but what are the different types of components available? What will be the typical structure of an enterprise application that you develop? You have something called a UI component. That's what we have seen so far. UI component is mainly for handling the user interface, rendering the views. So you design your views and then embed them in Windows, and then have the user interaction event handling in the UI component. And then you also you can see something called model component, which will not have typically any UI, but it will have only the context and the events and methods. And this is mainly used for interacting with your back-end business application to trigger a BAPI or make a call to a method of ABAP class, ABAP object, right? And then execute that business logic, validation, or surfacing any business document, right? So that is the model component. And somebody has to coordinate this, right, between UI and model. That is another controller component called the main component. That's what instantiates the UI component and then makes, coordinates between the UI component and the model component. So these are the main types of components you will be building if you are developing a Web Dynpro ABAP application. Okay. All right. So here is a very simple demo called flight search. It's going to have an input field where you can type in an add line code, and it's going to fetch all the flights relevant to that. I've already developed that, so I'm not going to spend time on showing you how to develop it, because it will take a long time to develop. So what I'm going to do is show the application that I have built, and then show you the important stuff, whatever you have learned so far. So here, Venky flight search, that is the name of the Web Dynpro component, right? Let me quickly search. Okay, sharing is fine. Okay, so that's the name of the Dynpro component, and I have a view called search flight. I have only one view of search flight, and that has two groups. The top group has the airline, and the bottom group has the table to display all the flights, right? And the top one is for selecting the airline. All right. Forget about the view container ALV. We will come back to that when we talk about ALV later on. Okay. So now what I've done is, of course, since we have a button called the get flight, right? That's the button. So if somebody or if the user clicks on the button, how do you handle the event? That is part of the property. If you look at the property, there is an event called onActionGo. So Go is an event. So how do you handle this event? You go to Action, and there is an action called Go, and the handler is onActionGo, and handler is typically a method called onActionGo, and if you double click here, you can code whatever you want. So this is the only line of code so far you have seen, right, in a Web Dynpro component and application. Everything else, the rest is just modeling, drag and drop, setting the attributes and stuff like that. Okay, so here, what are we doing here? We are invoking the component controller, and within the component controller, there is a method called getFlight. How do I know this syntax, right? Either you can go through the documentation and learn it, or you can get the help of the wizard. What you can do is, in the edit, there's something called Web Dynpro Code Wizard. So, using this, you can, generate small code fragments like patterns, right? So that's how I did it. I did not write this code. Trust me. I used the code wizard. Okay, so wizard is very helpful when you are not really familiar with the syntax. Okay, so let's go to the one more thing, the context. Of course, you have the controller, and go to the context. This is how you do the context mapping. On the right hand side, you have the component controller context. On the left hand side, you have the view controller context. And do you see the very small, tiny right arrow under key flights and the selection field? That means the key flight is being mapped. the context mapping is done for T-flight and T-selection. If it's not mapped, you would not see a small, tiny right arrow. Okay, so you should be very careful, notice, and try to learn what are those, small things mean. Okay, so under the window, we have embedded the search flight, right? That's all you need. Okay, so where do you do the actual business logic call? How do you access the flight table and then pull the flight? That is done in the component controller. Of course, you can have a separate model component and then make the business call there. But what I have done for simplicity's sake, I have done it here. As part of the method, get flight method. That's what being triggered. You saw in the previous screen. And this is where you do the actual business logic call. So all I'm doing is I'm calling the BAPI flight get list to get the list of flights for the given airline, and then tie back the T flight, bind it to the T flight node. Alright? And then you can run this application. Of course, it won't ask for the user ID and password, right? Because it's already the user ID and other credentials are embedded in the SSO to log on ticket. So, okay, so I'm going to type in get me all the American Airlines, get flights, voila. It lists all the American Airlines flights. Okay, you can scroll up and down. Of course, you are not doing any programming for scrolling and stuff like that. Okay, so this is a simple table. It's not ALV. We are going to look at ALV very soon. SAP list viewer, which is much more flexible and powerful than a simple UI element called table. Okay, back to the presentation. Component usage and ALV. Okay. Component usage. What is component usage? Whenever you build enterprise applications, you don't want to repeat similar stuff. You don't have to if you're building a small component of a screen and which needs to be done for another window, you don't have to repeat all the modeling. Instead, what you can do is you can define that in a separate component and then reuse it. So the basic reusable block is a component. So if you want to reuse something, build it as a separate component. Okay. Here is so example is customer address display, order details. For example, if you develop a separate component for displaying the address, think about it. It can be used anywhere to display sales order bill to address or a ship to address or a purchase order in the purchase order display the vendor address. So the same component could be used anywhere. And even within Web Dynpro programming model, the ALV is developed as a component. We'll see that in a couple of slides from now. Okay, so here's the usage. You have a main component A and B. You can have the same subcomponent, share it, and embed it in two main components. Or it could be the other way around. The main component may dynamically choose which subcomponent it wants to show. Okay, both are possible. Okay, ALV. What is ALV? If you are not from ABAP background, ALV comes from the ABAP world. It used to be called ABAP List Viewer. It is to display the table data with a lot more features. Now it's called SAP List Viewer in the ABAP world. So the same ALV concept is available in Web Dynpro for ABAP, starting with, of course, 2004. It is to display table data, and it is realized in Web Dynpro as a component, a reusable component. It's not a UI element like your table or an input field. It is a component on its own. Okay. Okay. Here is a very short demo. I'm going back to the same application or the same component, and if you look at this one here, there is a third element here called the view container ALV. That's how you do the reusable component. You create something called a container, view container, and then the ALV view can be embedded here. Okay. So how do you do that? You see here on the left hand side, component usage. That's what is called the component usage, because you are reusing the component, and I am going to embed the ALV as part of the component container. Alright, so on the left hand side you have the context of the ALV. So we have something called data. That's what needs to be mapped to the component controller, so that the flight values are automatically displayed in ALV also. So if you see here, notice it, the small tiny arrow right here has two heads, both left hand side and right hand side. Okay, so don't get confused. The right hand side means it's being mapped, and the left hand side means it's incoming. Okay, so let's execute it. Before that, I disable the ALV. So I'm going to enable the view container. Okay. Look at this, the visibility, I made it as blank. Now, we'll set it as visible view. That's because I am in display mode. I need to change it to change mode, and then I'm going to make it as visible. Save it. Mapping, I have mapped the same component controller data. So I should be seeing the same flight details both in the table form as well as in ALV form. Okay. Okay, alright. So the top two controller components, you have already seen it, the selection screen and the table. Now since I enable the ALV table data with lot more features being displayed. So let me pull the same American Airlines flight information. Look at that. Beautiful. Okay, in the ALV, you can set filter values. You can do personalization by clicking on the settings. You can export to Excel or PDF. Look at that, how powerful it is. Or sort based on any column, right? The PDF is not available as of ST01. It will be available in the future release. So look at the filter. What is filter? You can filter based on different values. Let's say I want to show only the New York flight. Hit enter. That displays only the New York flight. I want to display only the date 05/01/2005. Alright, so, and if you don't want the filters, just delete the filter. And settings, what are the settings? If you are familiar with the ABAP ALV, it's exactly identical. Look at that. Should be familiar with somebody with ABAP background. You can dynamically at runtime, the user can customize. He can say, I do not want to see the airline and date column, right? Remove it. Remove the airline and say OK. And that's it. So the airline column and the date columns are gone. Okay, so how powerful it is, ALV. And again, ALV is not a single UI element that you just drag and drop. It is a component usage, a component, reusable component on its own. Okay, quickly, Dynpro conversion. Probably you might be expecting this feature for a long time. What if you want to convert what about the existing Dynpro application? Dynpro, classical Dynpro application. Is it possible to convert those applications, the module flow, the stream, the flow logic, directly to Web Dynpro? Well, not really. To some extent, yes, but not entirely. What is Dynpro conversion? You can convert the Dynpro stream, just streams alone, from classical Dynpro to the Web Dynpro metadata. Okay? And if you are familiar with the ABAP Dynpro, the classical Dynpro, it has two components, two parts. One is the stream, the other one is the flow logic, right? the converter does not deal with the flow logic. It just simply converts your screen layout alone, UI elements into UI elements metadata. Okay? And of course, further development like handling the UI user event and flow logic and stuff like that needs to be done manually by the programmer. Okay? So here is a classical screen, the classical Dynpro screen. It can be converted to Web Dynpro metadata. And another interesting thing is all the screen elements will also have an equivalent context element or node created automatically. Okay, but if the screen element, Dynpro screen element, is defined within the program, not as part of the data dictionary, it may not bring all the values related. Okay. For example, all the underlying features of data element and data domain. How do you do it? How do you convert it? The transaction code is SE58. For example, on the left-hand side, this is the first screen that you see. I am converting the SAP ALV AP. That's the program name, and the string number is 100. Any string in Dynpro goes along with a program name. You always address the screen with the program name and the screen number, right? So, and you give the target Web Dynpro component, in this case Venky _ 10, and the view name to which it needs to be created. And if you click on the execute, the screen gets automatically converted. Okay, and here is a look at the converted Web Dynpro screen. So number one is the original Dynpro screen. So what did I convert? It is your classical SE38 main screen, initial screen. Okay, that's what I converted to the Web Dynpro metadata. And if you see here, you have a lot of long GUIs that you are going to face such challenges because of the text elements involved. And some of them, if the text element is not available in the original language, you will have to edit it manually. Okay, and on the right hand side you can see the element container containing the hierarchical representation of the context values. All right. So of course the Dynpro conversion has limitations. What kind of limitations? It cannot handle the enjoy controls, GUI controls, and it cannot handle the desktop integration, SAP graphics, and ABAP lists and stuff like that. Okay, and also dynamic screens rendered cannot be converted, only the static one. So there are quite a few limitations. So you have to pay attention to it. And of course, it may not be 100%. There may not be a one-to-one corresponding. You cannot expect the same positioning in these results. Okay, so you may have to fix it a little bit if you want to get the same look and feel. For example, if you have an icon on the labeled icon may not be available on the Web Dynpro model. Okay, so let's quickly go through, spend less than 5 minutes on the advanced topics. The advanced topics section is not to make you an expert in these topics, but only to show you what is capable of by Web Dynpro, and that's about it. So what are the topics we're going to cover under this? I'm going to show you what is dynamic Web Dynpro programming, and Adobe Form integration, photo integration, and a little bit on personalization. Okay, dynamic Web Dynpro programming. Why do we need it? So far, what we have seen is static in nature, right? Because at the design time, you decided what are the views, what are the elements, how the control is going to flow between views, and how the controller is going to control the views and the business logic calls, right? What if you are building a very complex configurable application? What if you are building a framework on its own, which would render different screens dynamically, right? So for such purposes, is it possible to do it in Web Dynpro? Yes, it is, using dynamic Web Dynpro programming. Highly customizable and flexible application. But the thing is, you should not make it as a rule, but rather an exception. That's because once you start developing these dynamic Web Dynpro programs, maintaining will be a nightmare. You are going back to, again, code-driven approach rather than model-driven approach. So only when it is necessary, you do the dynamic programming. Alright, so what can be done? You can manipulate the layout. You can delete or add new UI elements dynamically at runtime. Okay, and you can manipulate the context. You can fill or clear the nodes and add different attributes at runtime. Okay, and navigation can be controlled dynamically, and also componentry. The container, you can leave it empty, and then at runtime you can fill it in with any component. So these are all some of the features, main features you can do with dynamic for program. And the second one is Adobe Forms integration. Of course, Adobe is widely used by the business people. If you are trying to work with the documents, which is the look and feel is more like what people used to see on paper, in Adobe Forms is ideal. And mainly in the business, there are three types of applications for Adobe Forms. One is the interactive online application, where the person will be logged into the SAP system and filling out a form. Or offline interactive form, wherein the user would fill out a form without a real a connection to the backend system, and then later on submit the form to email or HTTP for processing. And the third form is the backend operations like printing, mass printing, archiving, and sending the PDF attachments to email. Right. So here is a classical application. An assembly line worker, he wants to order some material. Right. So how do you do it? He is very much used to the paper form. So he will be comfortable if the same form is presented to him even online when he logs into the SAP through the portal, right? So, and also another advantage is pre-filling the field. The SAP application can find out based on the single sign-on or the log-on credentials what is his name, the employee ID, who is his supervisor, and his cost center and things like that, and then pre-fill such applications. And then the user has to just fill in the required fields and then submit it. So is it supported by Web Dynpro? Yes, it is. If you have already worked with the Java flavor, you would know more about it. So what is supported? The layout using the Adobe Designer is supported, and there are APIs for getting and getters and setters, and you can map these APIs to the context data. So at runtime, it can be the value that you bring in from the business logic can be mapped to the Adobe UI suite. Okay. All right. Portal integration. Of course, Portal is the strategic UI delivery platform for SAP. So, and Web Dynpro is the strategic UI development platform. So, of course, it would make sense for delivering the Web Dynpro content in Portal in the form of iViews. So, how do you do it? There are Web Dynpro iViews wizards. So you can go to the wizard and create an iView. It's going to ask you whether it's a Java Web Dynpro or ABAP Web Dynpro. You choose that and then give the system, the backend system, and voila, it will make it available. Based on the role, you will be able to run the application, right? So what are the benefits? Central user management. You don't have to get the basic authentication pop-up, right? Once you are logged into a portal, it's already available for you if you do the user mapping or the system connectivity. And portal eventing is supported. You're going to see that in the next slide. And object-based navigation is also possible. And of course, the branding by the portal team. If you develop an application, the Web Dynpro application in the backend, and then if you change the theme in the portal, the look and feel would automatically change for Web Dynpro. You don't have to make any special effort for changing the theme and make it synchronized with the portal. Done automatically. So portal integration, how do you do it? You can create the backend Web Dynpro application, and then in the portal you create the iView, Web Dynpro iView. And then for the access, you create a system or do the user mapping, right? And then the IU is automatically assigned to the role. So if the user logs in with a specific role, it will be available. Alright, so eventing. What is portal eventing? Portal eventing is if you have more than one IU on the portal, and if you want to control the behavior of another second IU by the behavior of the first IU, that is done through portal eventing. That is, if you have two IU and the user clicks on or enters the value in the first IU, what if you want to control the action or display the value in the second IU? That is done through the client manager, something called the portal manager on the client side through JavaScript. Okay, so since it is done at the client side through JavaScript, it is very loosely coupled. So that's why you can do the portal eventing even if these two IUs are created in different technologies. For example, the first IU is Web Dynpro ABAP. The second IU is created through Web Dynpro for Java, or could be a .NET PDK, right? But still, you can do portal eventing. Alright. So the trick is to raise an event in the first one, and then the second IU will subscribe to that event and listen to that event, and that will be triggered. In Web Dynpro ABAP, how do you do that? You subscribe to the event called add_cd, as given in the first IU, and then the second IU, say the user clicks on a button, right? And you fire the event name, that is add_cd. So, method or the action in the first IU will be triggered. Okay, that is portal eventing. So the last and final topic, which is personalization and configuration, we have already seen a little bit of it. The personalization comes out of the box. You don't have to do any extra programming, but that's called implicit personalization. There is also something called explicit personalization, which can be implemented by the respective component. Okay, the look and feel, you saw in the ALV, right? If there is a setting button, you click on it, you can dynamically, the user can personalize what columns he wants to see, and then different values. So that is the implicit personalization by the respective UI element. Okay, and of course it's available out of the box. And the personalized values are stored in the portal directory. It's persisted in the portal database. Alright, so to wrap up, Web Dynpro for ABAP, summary is, Web Dynpro is the SAP strategy for UI, and it is a technology that is independent of the client, which is a very, very strong concept, and the programming model is similar to the Java flavor. So if you know modeling in one flavor, you can very easily do it in another, and it has a tight portal integration. The availability for Web Dynpro for ABAP is part of the NetWeaver 2004S, which is the basis for the MySAP ERP 2005 and MySAP Business Suite 2005. And the ramp-up is starting in Q4, end of October 2005. And where can you get the infos, tutorials, and demos? It will be available for the public in SDN soon. And for internal folks, that is SAP folks, you can go to the alias ABAP and you can find a tutorial and documentation right now. It's 100% available in German, and they are right now, as we speak, converting it to English. So part of it is available in English. And also there are nice tutorials and hands-on demo tutorials which you can play around with. Okay, so we are done with the presentation. So Cynthia, can you open up the floor for questions?
Thank you, and ladies and gentlemen, if you wish to ask a question, please press star followed by 1 on your touch-tone phone. You will hear a tone indicating that you have been placed in queue, and you may remove yourself from queue at any time by pressing the pound key. And if you are using a speakerphone, we ask that you please pick up your handset before pressing the numbers. And once again, for any questions or comments, please press *1 at this time. And our first question comes from the line of Andre Philippov. Go ahead.
I have a question. If, let's say, my customer has to make a choice between Web Dynpro for ABAP and Web Dynpro for Java, what should we recommend?
Okay,
let's say we have the skill set on both sides, right, on Java and ABAP. So besides the skill set, what else would drive my choice?
Okay, that's a very good question. Java or ABAP, right? Okay. Of course, the first answer would have been, what kind of skill set do you have in your shop, whether it's primarily ABAP or Java. And since you answered...
Let's say I can send people to training for ABAP or Java, or Web Dynpro for ABAP or Web Dynpro for Java. That's probably the second question. What else?
Okay. What else in the sense? That's based on the applications that you develop. If the application is more tied to the back end, for example, you have an R3 system, so if the application is more tied towards the, web enabling some of the capabilities of your back-end R3, which is primarily an ABAP, running on ABAP server, then you would go in for Web Dynpro for ABAP. Since the integration is well established and the performance is also good. If you are trying to build an application that is more away from the back-end ABAP server, for example, making use of Microsoft web services or third-party Oracle, let's say Oracle Financials, integration with Oracle Financials or stuff like that, then probably you would go in for Web Dynpro for Java. Does it make sense?
It does. Also, I have a question. Is there a conversion procedure between Web Dynpro for ABAP and Web Dynpro for Java? So let's say I developed everything in Web Dynpro for Java, and then I want to convert it into Web Dynpro.
Another good question. Since Web Dynpro is based on metadata, technically, of course, it is possible because whether you design it in Web Dynpro for Java or ABAP, the metadata that is created should be fixed, right? That's what makes it more interesting. Even in the future, they may come up with, of course, they are not working on, but theoretically, just hypothetically, they may come up with Web Dynpro for some other language. But as of now, there is no such tool. You cannot convert Web Dynpro created in Java to ABAP or vice versa.
Okay, and the last question I have is that my customer right now has SAP ERP 2004, which is CCC 5.0. So whereas in 2005 we want to use SAP 2004 as, so we just need to upgrade our return SAP infrastructure data that we use SAP for ABAP.
That's correct, but of course, just to make use of Web Dynpro for ABAP, they don't have to upgrade their ERP system. Right?
It's just an SAP part of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Only the app server part of it. But you may want to work with your account executives on exploring the possibility of ramp-up because there are very limited ramp-up availability for standalone systems. If the customer is upgrading from prior release to MySAP ERP 2005 or Business Suite 2005, then NetWeaver 2004S will be available. But if they are not a MySAP ERP 2005 or Business Suite 2005 customer, the standalone ramp-up is very limited. So you may want to work with your account executive on that.
Okay, so basically I shouldn't think about it if I just have MySAP ERP 2004.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
And once again, for any questions or comments, please press *1. And we'll go to the line of Mike Sun. Please go ahead.
Hi, Venky. Last time I thought about the implementation of the
PPT, I guess will be made available as part of the Friday webinar series. A notification will be sent out to everyone, all the participants.
Our next question comes from the line of Ted Sean. Please go ahead.
Hello. My question is about the future release of SAP products. So far, Web Dynpro Java has been used for the MySAP ERP 2004, like ESF and SF. Do we have any plan to develop future SAP products using Web Dynpro ABAP rather than Web Dynpro Java?
Very good question. Of course, since the MSS and ESS were released much earlier than the Web Dynpro for ABAP was available. That's why it was developed in Java. Of course, Web Dynpro, the Web Dynpro platform is the strategic UI strategy of SAP. Currently, there are no plans for converting the MSS and ESS to Web Dynpro for ABAP, but I would presume any future new development that is tied more closely with the backend ABAP server would be developed in Web Dynpro for ABAP.
All right, thanks.
And at this time, I'm still not having further questions received.
Okay, wonderful. So thanks a lot, all of you, for attending this one. And the Web Dynpro for ABAP, as you know, it is pretty new. Only 2 to 2% of those to ASEC local chapter prior to this one. So you are one of the first few people to view this in US for the first time. If you have any further questions, you can contact me, Venky. I'm the PM point of contact in US, or if the customer or if the person is outside the US, you can contact Dirk Pekin, who is the product manager located in AG. And as I said, the presentation will be made available to you soon. Both the recorded version will also be made available, and I've also recorded this WebEx, so you can listen to both the visual as well as the voice part of it, and I will send or make the WebEx recording available to you in the near future. Alright, so once again, thanks a lot for attending this. Bye-bye.
And ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude your conference for today. Thank you for your participation and for using AT&T Executive Teleconference Service.